For FBI Special Agent Julian Cross, under the alias Lucas Hayes, the line between duty and deception had always been razor thin. He'd built a career out of blending into the shadows, infiltrating criminal organizations, and walking the tightrope of dangerous relationships. But nothing in his years of service prepared him for the operation that would bring him face to face with Evelyn Vega, the enigmatic leader of a high-profile arms smuggling ring. What started as a calculated mission to take down her empire turned into a whirlwind of lies, passion, and betrayal, a double cross that would cost more than he ever anticipated. Julian's assignment was straightforward on paper. Infiltrate Vega's organization, gather enough evidence to dismantle the operation, and secure her arrest. Evelyn Vega was no ordinary criminal. She was sharp, resourceful, and dangerously charismatic. Her organization had connections to militant groups overseas, and her smuggling network posed a national security threat. She'd evaded law enforcement for years, and the Bureau was determined to bring her down. Julian, with his unassuming charm and a proven track record of successful undercover work, was the perfect candidate for the job. He assumed the alias of Lucas Hayes, a disgraced military contractor looking to sell sensitive information for the right price. After months of meticulous preparation, Julian managed to insert himself into Evelyn Vega's orbit through one of her lower-level associates, Carlos Charlie Ramirez, a street-savvy middleman with connections to the underground arms market. At first, his interactions with Evelyn Vega were fleeting. She was cautious, preferring to keep new recruits at arm's length. But Julian had a knack for earning trust. He played the part of the ambitious yet disillusioned mercenary perfectly, feeding her just enough information to pique her interest while carefully concealing his true identity. Evelyn wasn't just brilliant, she was magnetic. At 34, she exuded confidence and control, commanding attention in every room she entered. Julian knew she was dangerous, but there was something about her that pulled him in despite himself. He'd been warned not to let emotions cloud his judgment, but the chemistry between them was undeniable. Their relationship shifted during a late-night meeting at one of her safe houses. Evelyn had called him in to discuss a potential shipment route, a crucial piece of the puzzle for the Bureau's case against her. The conversation began as strictly business, but as the hours wore on, the tone became more personal. Evelyn asked questions about his past, and Julian wove a convincing story of betrayal and survival. She poured them both a glass of whiskey, and for the first time, he saw her guard drop. "You know," she said, her voice soft but calculated, "I don't trust easily. But there's something about you, Lucas. You're different." Julian's heart pounded. He'd been trained to manipulate, to play whatever role was necessary to complete the mission. But this felt different. The way she looked at him, it was as if she saw through the layers of lies he'd carefully constructed. Before he could stop himself, he leaned in, and their lips met. That night marked the beginning of their affair. What started as a calculated move to deepen her trust quickly spiraled into something far more complicated. Julian told himself it was just part of the job, but deep down he knew he was crossing a line he couldn't uncross. The affair brought Julian closer to Evelyn, but it also brought new dangers. The more time he spent with her, the harder it became to reconcile his feelings with his mission. Evelyn, for all her crimes, wasn't the cold-hearted villain the Bureau had painted her to be. She was fiercely loyal to her people and driven by a desire to protect those she cared about. Julian began to see shades of gray in a world he'd always viewed as black and white. But the Bureau had no patience for moral ambiguity. Julian's handler, Agent Sarah Lynn, grew increasingly suspicious of his motives. She'd worked with him for years and could tell something was off. During one of their debriefs, she confronted him. "You're getting too close, Julian," she said, her tone firm. "This isn't about her, it's about the mission. Don't lose sight of that." "I know what I'm doing," Julian snapped, though he wasn't sure he believed it. Meanwhile, Evelyn's second-in-command, Mateo Ruiz, began to grow suspicious of Julian. Mateo was fiercely loyal to Evelyn and didn't trust outsiders. He started digging into Julian's background, looking for any cracks in the story. Carlos Charlie Ramirez also began to question Julian's intentions, noting his increasingly erratic behavior around Evelyn. Though less perceptive than Mateo, Charlie's street sense told him that Julian was hiding something. His suspicions pushed him to keep a closer eye on Julian, hoping to catch him in the act. The breaking point came during a major deal in Prague. Evelyn had arranged to sell a shipment of stolen military-grade weapons to a buyer with ties to an extremist group. The Bureau saw it as the perfect opportunity to take her down. Julian was tasked with planting a tracking device on the shipment and signaling the strike team once the deal was underway. But things didn't go as planned. Evelyn had confided in Julian about her doubts regarding the buyer. She suspected a setup and decided to change the meeting location at the last minute. Julian relayed the new information to the Bureau, but it caused chaos in the operation. The strike team's window of opportunity was rapidly closing. As the deal unfolded, Mateo Ruiz confronted Julian in a secluded hallway of the meeting venue. He'd found discrepancies in Julian's backstory and demanded answers. The confrontation turned violent, and Julian was forced to kill Mateo in self-defense. The noise alerted Evelyn, who arrived just in time to see Julian standing over Mateo's lifeless body. Evelyn crumpled to the floor, and then Evelyn's face twisted with a mix of shock and betrayal. "Who are you?" she demanded, her voice trembling. Julian hesitated, knowing there was no way out. "I'm sorry, Evelyn. I'm FBI." Her eyes widened, and for a moment, Julian thought she might pull the trigger on the pistol she had aimed at him. Instead, she fled, leaving him standing in the aftermath of his betrayal. The Bureau's operation was a partial success. The strike team intercepted the weapons shipment, and several members of Evelyn's organization were arrested. But Evelyn herself disappeared, vanishing into the criminal underworld. Julian's career was in shambles. His affair with Evelyn came to light during the post-series review, leading to an internal investigation. Agent Sarah Lynn, furious at his recklessness, testified against him, and Julian was suspended indefinitely. His once promising career was reduced to a cautionary tale within the Bureau. Evelyn, meanwhile, re-emerged months later with a vengeance. She leaked classified information about the Bureau's undercover operations, endangering countless agents in the field, and she seemed to delight in taunting Julian through anonymous messages. One message in particular stayed with him: "You thought you could use me, but I used you. You'll never catch me, Lucas." Or should I say, Julian. Evelyn's grief and fury over Mateo's death became her defining motivation. He wasn't just a second in command, he was like a brother to her, someone who had been with her from the beginning. His loss struck deep, and the betrayal she felt at Julian's hands pushed her further into the shadows. She became even more calculating, trusting no one and seeking vengeance on anyone who had crossed her. The pain of Mateo's death became the foundation for her next steps, as she plotted to dismantle the Bureau and continue her criminal empire with a darker edge. For Julian, the murder of Mateo became an unbearable weight. The moment he took Mateo's life, he had always believed in the righteousness of his mission, but killing Mateo was not a part of the plan. It was a line crossed, a line that could never be uncrossed. As his career with the FBI collapsed, Julian fell into a spiral of guilt and self-loathing. His every waking moment was haunted by the image of Mateo's body and Evelyn's devastated face. He struggled to maintain his cover story, but his broken psyche made it impossible to fully deceive himself, let alone anyone else. The trust he had in his own judgment shattered, and he grew increasingly paranoid, unsure of who was watching him. His isolation deepened, and the affair with Evelyn, once a source of solace, became a painful reminder of his failure. Evelyn, for her part, took a different path. After going underground, she became a master of manipulation, using her pain and anger to fuel her actions. She orchestrated a series of calculated moves to sabotage the Bureau's operations, starting with leaking classified information to undermine their ongoing investigations. The world saw her as a shadow, a ghost who could not be caught. But for Julian, she remained a constant presence, a haunting reminder of the life he had lost and the choices that had brought him to this point. Evelyn's vendetta against him became more personal with each passing day. She used their past against him, tormenting him with anonymous messages, manipulating him into questioning everything he believed in. The once clear line between right and wrong blurred into something unrecognizable. Meanwhile, the FBI continued its pursuit of Evelyn, but without Julian's insider knowledge, their efforts were hampered. Evelyn's ability to stay one step ahead, combined with her deep connections in the criminal world, made her a nearly impossible target. She became the symbol of defiance against the law, the embodiment of everything the FBI couldn't control. Julian, meanwhile, was left to pick up the pieces of his shattered life. His suspension was a slow burn, with the weight of his actions crushing him from all sides. His reputation within the Bureau was destroyed, and his once promising career was reduced to a cautionary tale. Yet, even as his professional life crumbled, he found himself unable to walk away from the remnants of his past. Evelyn's betrayal lingered, and the unresolved emotions surrounding their affair gnawed at him, pushing him to the edge. Unable to outrun his past, Julian became obsessed with finding Evelyn, hoping that one final confrontation could bring him some sense of closure. But no matter how hard he tried, she always remained a step ahead, playing the game better than he ever could. As time passed, Evelyn's influence grew. She became a shadowy figure, a name whispered among the criminal elite, her legacy both feared and respected. Her vendetta against Julian continued to drive her, and every scheme she orchestrated seemed to carry with it the imprint of their past. For Julian, the weight of Mateo's death was always present. No matter how many times he told himself it was self-defense, no matter how many times he justified his actions to others, he couldn't escape the truth. He had taken a life, and in doing so had crossed a line that could never be uncrossed. The story of Julian Cross and Evelyn Vega became a legend within law enforcement circles, a tale of deception, betrayal, and the price of crossing moral lines. It was a cautionary tale, a reminder of how the boundaries between right and wrong could be so easily blurred, and how the consequences of those blurred lines could reverberate long after the mission was over. This case is absolutely insane. The layers of deception, the broken trust. It's a twisted game of cat and mouse, and no one walks away unscathed. Julian thought he was in control, but in the end, the line between duty and desire completely blurred. Evelyn, on the other hand, became a force of pure vengeance. It's one of those stories that keeps you questioning who the real villain is. Let me know what you think about this one in the comments, because honestly, I'm still trying to process it. Thanks for watching, and I'll catch you in the next one. The names, the details, and the sentences of this case are not real. These made-up scenarios allow us to explore suspenseful situations without exploiting real-life tragedies. Our goal is to create thought-provoking mysteries while respecting the privacy and dignity of real people. Thank you for watching, and let us know your thoughts below.